We need to ask ourselves why BIH, until now, has received more per capita assistance than Western Europe under the Marshall Plan, and still remains weak and unsustainable, requiring several more years of, quote, international intensive attention. One reason is that we have failed to prioritize the priorities, particularly with respect to the rule of law. Law is to be the oil that lubricates civilization. Titles, deeds, mortgages, marriage, divorce, investments, ultimately everything is the rule of law. That's why I think we as Americans, when we take an oath, we don't take it the presidents who fail or congressmen who go to jail or Supreme Courts who make political decisions. The oath says, I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. The rule of law is the overarching umbrella that keeps this country together, regardless of race, religion, ethnic origin, etc., etc., etc. I have no doubt that the rule of law must be placed as the centerpiece of practically every peacekeeping mission. Without it, a credible exit strategy is inconceivable. International military forces cannot leave, the economy cannot recover, democracy remains a facade, and corruption and criminalization become entrenched. My fourth prerequisite for success is leadership. The right personnel and support, particularly from the council and the key members in the contact group. And that's not easy because you normally don't have much of a say over who your staffs are. In any given UN mission, only 10 to 15% are career UN people. The rest are contractors, 6 months, 1 year. Which has another negative downside. It means in Bosnia-Herzegovina, as you say, we're going to close the mission in January 2003 successfully. In September 2002, your people are already starting to bail out on you. Why? I've got to find a job. East Timor, Georgia, I don't care where the hell it is. But I have to find work because I have a family. I asked Kofi once, I said, what organization would take a winning basketball team after a winning season and then let all 5 players kind of go wherever the hell they want to go instead of bringing them for the next game or the next year? As James Gow has phrased it in his book entitled The Triumph of the Lack of Political Will, the debacle of UNPROFOR as a peacekeeping mission was in fact the triumph of political will by a number of players, none who wanted it to really be a success. In UNTAS, we enjoyed the fullest support of the Council to the extent that when President Tudjman threatened to terminate the mission prematurely, the Council sent him a strong message by actually renewing our mandate 2 months before it was due to expire. In UNMIB and UNMIL, I also enjoyed the consistent support of the Council throughout my tenure. I'm particularly grateful that the Council endorsed our mandate implementation plan, which is now standard, as I said, in all UN missions. What are we here to do, and how do we measure what we're here to do, and how do we judge completion or non-completion? On the issue of personnel, I have 2 points. The first is to have a critical mass of trained peacekeepers. In UNTAS, the ratio of international personnel to local population was 1:1:5. In UNMIB, we had international police monitors for every 10 local police officers. Police officers. I had policemen from 45 different countries to restructure and rebuild the police of Bosnia-Herzegovina to the highest European standards. Now, you and I know that the Yugoslav police were good. They were very good. They could beat you so it didn't show. In fact, the problem was if you had a problem, you didn't go to the police. They were the problem. So now I have someone from, I won't name the country, but a country where they ride bicycle and beat people with sticks, and he's coming to Europe to help me train the Yugoslav police to achieve these high European standards. Yugoslav police, when it came to criminal investigation, interrogation, all the other things, and traffic management, were very, very good. Problem was democratization. So you have 45 contingents, and naturally you can't refuse. The United States, United Nations is an international body, so you have to take what you can get. The second point is the recognition of a civilian staff as a continuity and driving force in the mission success. Our people were indeed our greatest asset. But the UN's treatment of civilian staff was often shameful, still is shameful, and is one of the weakest links in the system. As we came to closure in UNMIB, we had over 200 international mission appointees that had no duty station to return to, and now received onward assignments. The prospect of unemployment weighed heavily on the mission's morale at a time when efficiency was needed most at the end of the mandate. Surely we could have and must do more for our own people. Ultimately, we're in their debt, and we owe them our thanks and appreciation for what they've done. This is not an easy life. Monrovia, Liberia, a city of 1,400,000 people, with no running water, no electricity, no sewage system, malnutrition. When I left, we were still feeding 600,000 a day. Claustrophobia, a little bit of paranoia. You're sleeping on the floor, you're washing with Evian, Perrier, depending what your preferences are. This is not an easy life, in other words. This is not Cyprus, for those of our colleagues who are on a mission in Cyprus. Finally, a few words about a mission's closure and departure. I've always maintained that the success of a mission is judged not only by what it achieves, but also by how it leaves. Following the completion of UNTAS's mandate, long-term monitoring was undertaken by the OSCE, and we started negotiating with them quite a long period of time before the mandate ended, with ironclad agreements brokered by the mission so that the Croats could not fudge out of what they had agreed to. Unmitigated successes, successes have been sustained by the European Police Mission, the EUPM. A seamless transition occurred, serving as an excellent example of the regional cooperation called for in the Brahimi report. To quote my colleague, former High Rep Petty Ashdown, quote, "Europe can now begin its role in Bosnia and Herzegovina, certain that the United Nations has done its job." In conclusion, the one thing I know is that there is no single answer on how to ensure a successful peacekeeping operation. But I do believe that a decade of peacekeeping in the Balkans and Africa has identified some fundamentals. A mission stands or falls on the basis of its mandate, how you structure that mission, its organization, the strategic planning and prioritization you do when you come in, its leadership, personnel, and political support, and ultimately how you leave. While there can be no definitive operations manual, there are core lessons and best practices to be considered. Get them right, and the operation has a real chance of success. Get them wrong, the mission will collapse, or at best flounder indefinitely, trapping us in these long-term, expensive, seemingly endless engagements that degrade over time as political fatigue, donor fatigue, and compassion fatigue set in. We still have missions in Kashmir, as you know. Many of the issues I've raised are identified in the Brahimi report, and to the credit of our colleague Jean-Marie Guénaud, they are now being institutionalized into DPKO to be applied to new situations of even greater complexity. In closing, I should also like to recognize the thousands of United Nations peacekeepers. In Liberia, I had 18,000, in Bosnia, 4, in Croatia, 7. Civilians, police, military, for their dedication and determination, quote, in the service of peace. A service in which many of them have made the ultimate sacrifice. I lost 72 in Liberia. For over half a century, they've lived up to the biblical admonition, which I think is in Isaiah, which said, whom shall we send who will go in our name? And they have stepped forward consistently and said, send us, we will go. The Irish from the very beginning. So let me stop here, and I would much prefer to use the remainder of the time to have a dialogue, answer some questions, and I want to thank you for your time and attention.